Yo, welcome to Bird's Eye View LLC's feature podcast, Spoken from a Bird's Eye View, which was born at the intersection of human innovation and technology, and we seek to help those on the path of enlightenment through connection by media. Now, how are we connecting by media? Really, we're talking about three things, or we wanted to connect three things. We want to connect this idea of celebrating culture and increasing understanding and building bonds of respect, right? And as we do those things, we're talking about five major pillars. We call these the five foundational pillars of life. That's arts and entertainment, economic development, financial literacy, health and wellness, and spirituality. Now, we'll be honest, I sprinkle in a lot of political talk along the way because it encompasses all of those five pillars. So thank you so much for pressing play and tapping in with Bird's Eye View Media and also Spoken from a Bird's Eye View. Let's go ahead and take flight. Don't forget to follow us across the board on all social media platform sites. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. That'll be Bird's Eye View Media LLC. And also you can find us on Spotify and Anchor at Spoken from a Bird's Eye View podcast. Want to thank you in advance for all your support. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share. And also just help me share all this beautiful message. Without further ado, I want to welcome you again to another episode of Spoken from a Bird's Eye View podcast. I am your host. Tonight we're going to have a great episode. So thanks for pressing play and tapping in. So we're talking about great things tonight. And before we get into the actual subject matter, I want to take a moment to introduce our guest. Now, Dr. Ashley Farmer. She's an associate professor in the Department of Criminal Justice Sciences. Originally from Kentucky, Dr. Farmer completed her PhD at the University of Delaware in 2016. Her primary areas of research are policing, specifically police community relations and how technology impacts this relationship. For example, her dissertation examined the reasons why citizens record the police officers' responses to being recorded by the public, and also the police and public perceptions of body-worn cameras. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, without any further ado, I want to welcome our guest, Dr. Ashley Farmer. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Safety Act, all right? I'm sure a lot of people perhaps never heard of it, but it's a big question that's coming up on our November 8th election, and that is why we are exploring this topic here tonight. So, just examining our political pillar, I want to welcome our guest, Dr. Ashley Farmer. Dr. Ashley Farmer, thanks for joining Spoken from a Bird's Eye View podcast.
Thank you so much. I love being here, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Amazing. So, we read the biography, but tell us a little bit about what kind of has you interested in, your areas of research and study.
I think I originally got into issues of cop watch and cop watching just from seeing a lot of stories about people recording the police and seeing a lot of videos as a result being discussed in the media. And I was interested in sort of fleshing that out further of, what compels someone to intervene as a bystander and record the police when something is happening. What happens after that, if anything, when it becomes public, and those types of questions.
Yes. Just curiosity sounds like, and a reasonable amount of curiosity as it relates to citizens and the police, and kind of just that check and balances to make sure both are, operating properly, if you will. Is that correct? Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. All right. Amazing. So what would you say, how does your research kind of lead to what we want to talk about tonight? Because tonight we're talking about the Safety Act. Like I say, some people may be experts at the Safety Act, but 90% of the public, they're like, I heard of it. I think I know a little bit about it. So kind of, draw that connection for the public, if you will.
Sure. So one of the things about the Safety Act is that it includes a lot of policing reforms. So that has been a big issue. I also sit on the Bloomington, Illinois Public Safety and Community Relations Board, which is sort of like our police review board here. And a lot of members of the public have brought up these questions to the police department and have asked us to sort of address their concerns. And so in that respect, it's also been an interest of mine to learn more about the Safety Act as well, and the other components of the Safety Act beyond just the policing reforms.
Wow. See, that's a lot. So the police reform is just one element or one pillar, if you will, but there are other avenues and, other, legislation that is a part of that, if you will, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, okay, okay. So, just in layman's terms, what is the Safety Act?
So it stands for Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act. They just kind of shortened it to
Okay.
SAFE-T, right?
I'm glad they did the acronym because
yeah. And it's really just a broad criminal justice reform bill. So it addresses things like I mentioned in policing. So use of force, mandating body cameras, various training and certification processes for police officers, whistleblower protections. And of course, the biggest thing on people's minds probably is that it also addresses bail reform.
Okay, okay. And that is like you said, I think that's the one that we want to underscore here tonight, that bail reform.
Yeah.
But all of those other ones, hey, it's needed, it's much needed, just across the board, as far as, a more unified criminal justice system. So if the reform and the new policies are going to lead toward a new day, of course, it's quite natural that we just kind of do spring cleaning and do it across the board. So everything is okay. But you highlighted a key component there, the bail reform. The bail reform. Okay. So before we go into the bail reform, public, I do want to say, hey, this video is going to be available. So we said a lot there as far as the words. So hey, feel free to go back and listen, and then do more research. Do a general Google search, and you'll be able to find a lot more. So as far as just like certain avenues that we're not delving into deeper. Okay. Now, Dr. Farmer, the bail reform. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So this bill abolishes cash bail, which is something that has been an issue for quite some time, right? People who have advocated for abolishing cash bail have noted how it disproportionately impacts, especially people of color, and how it's essentially, a poverty tax, if you will. So people who are charged with the same thing, who, let's say, just for the sake of this example, have the same criminal history. One of them can afford their bail and one of them cannot. One of them stays in jail until they go to trial and one of them does not. And so the goal in abolishing cash bail is just to make that a little bit more equitable, in that now, instead of you're only going to be released pre-trial if you can afford it, it's you're only going to be released pre-trial if you don't pose a danger to society or to anyone specifically, and if you're not a flight risk.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. So quite a few people are confused as to like that component. That's why that was very important to dive a little deeper into. I've actually heard it, stated, just as far as more criminals will be either on the street or more criminals will be, even if they commit a crime, there's no harsh punishment. Would that be an accurate statement?
I don't think that's entirely accurate. So to the first point, there will be more criminals on the street. I think it's important to remember that these are people who have been charged with crimes but not convicted. So, they're not necessarily criminals, so to speak. They are facing charges in some cases. And right. So they are going to go to trial, and that will determine whether or not they are going to go to prison or not. So to the second part of the question, there's really nothing that would change the sentencing for someone who goes up for a particular crime before a trial, so that latter part, I don't really think is much of an issue.
Okay. All right. See, that's great clarity. Now, as far as the bail reform and the cashless bail, can you talk a little bit, or do you have any information as far as how that process will play out? Like, who are the decision makers at that point? Will it just be the judges? Will it just be the state attorneys? Will it just, can you kind of explore that just a little deeper for us?
Sure. So the section 110-6.1 of the bill, which, it's like almost 800 pages, right? So
You'll be reading for quite some time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So it states specifically, pretrial release may only be denied when a person is charged with an offense listed in section 110-6.1 or when the defendant has a high likelihood of willful flight and after the court has held a hearing under Section 110-6.1. Those offenses that are listed under Section 110-6.1 are a defendant who is charged with a forcible felony, for which a sentence of imprisonment without probation, periodic imprisonment, or conditional discharge is required by law upon conviction, and it is alleged that the defendant's pretrial release poses a specific, real, and present threat to any person or the community. So in other terms, essentially, this is going to be, they're going to go before a judge, and the prosecutor is going to say, we would like this person held pre-trial, and here's why. And they have to prove, this is why they're a danger, or this is why they're a flight risk. And the judge will consider that information.
Exactly. Much similar to the previous process, correct? It just kind of eliminates the bail. It kind of shows that inequitable processes that were in place, and it removes those, correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Farmer, for that clarity. Amazing. Now, what else can you share with the public as far as this Safety Act? I know you touched on a lot of other key components. All right. So the bail reform, I think this is a huge hurrah, right? I think that is a major hurrah as far as, like I said, making it more even as far as the equitability of the playing ground, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you touched on those other key components. Can you highlight some of those?
Sure. So I first want to point out that a really great place to go for information, if anyone is interested, is the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. So they have a great overview on their website with citations of exactly where you can find these things in the bill. So I encourage everyone to check that out if they're interested.
800 pages is quite a lot to read, people.
Yeah, and sidebar for a quick second, I think the fact that it is almost 800 pages is why there's so much misinformation and confusion, because people aren't going to sit down and read 800 pages of legal jargon.
Yes.
So people are dependent on others telling them what's in the bill. And if others are spreading misinformation about the bill, that causes problems.
It causes a lot of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And just to highlight again, the reason why we're discussing this tonight, we do want to share credible, research-based information, right? Dr. Farmer has explained, she's going to provide the link, right? And I'll be able to highlight that even on our video. So just from that standpoint, people, just take a moment to do the research. And at the times when you do not have a full moment to do all of the reading, like she said, just kind of go to the shortcuts and find the credible sources that will lead you down the right path, and then empower you as you go into the voting booths on November 8th. All right. So you were saying sidebar there, Dr. Farmer.
Yeah.
What else? Right.
Okay, so to your question of other things that includes, so for policing, there's different use of force reforms. So there's new standards for when police use force. They are required to provide first aid after using force immediately. Wow. It also requires officers to intervene if they see another police officer using excessive force or engaging in some sort of misconduct when it comes to use of force. It also bans the purchasing and acquirement of various types of military equipment by police departments.
Okay.
So there's a federal program in the United States that has been around for decades called the 1033 program, in which police departments can acquire surplus military equipment.
Yeah, that militarization of the police force, yes.
Absolutely. It's been around since the 80s. And so it bans the purchasing and use of certain types of military equipment. So armored vehicles, weaponized helicopters, specific things like that. It also mandates body cameras, and there are different dates for implementing body cameras depending on the size of the police department.
Okay.
It also has anonymous complaints in Illinois are now a thing.
Wow.
So those can be submitted to a board in Illinois if someone wants to file an anonymous complaint. There's also a certification and decertification process for police officers now, where a police officer can be decertified if they engage in any sort of misconduct.
Yes.
And that sort of thing.
Yes. So a deeper level of than the typical police review board, just a deeper
Mm-hmm.
level accountability, if you will.
Yes.
Nice.
It also enhances protections, moving into other parts of the bill. And there's a lot of policing stuff I didn't even get to, another a bit minor stuff, right? It also expands protections for like pregnant inmates and things like that. So it establishes the Domestic Violence Pretrial Practices Working Group.
Wow.
Where they're going to collect data, right, and just see how this is working. It adds notification of pretrial hearing to crime victims. There's so much. I mean, like I said,
it sounds amazing so far.
mm-hmm.
Like this is universal police reform, like top to bottom, and as well, like it's important to say as well, this may just be a starting point, right? And even if to clarify that even further, not even a starting point, because there have been individuals providing research, right? Lobbyists going to our police forces, departments, federal, state level, municipality level, and we've been providing these kind of research and data, right? So for a very long time. But I just want to reiterate the point of the work will continue to need to be done tomorrow as well, right? So progress today, right? And then we discover more things need, a little bit of attention, if you will, right? And that's just how life is. That's how life is. And we pass the torch to someone else. And we say, hey, you know what? This is the work that we've did so far. And this is the truth that we've uncovered so far. And we need to do a little bit more, right? So that's what I mean by universal. Great police reform, top to bottom. So I like what I'm hearing, Dr. Farmer, and thank you so much for sharing this information, because like I said, we want our voters empowered. We want you empowered with the correct information, and also we want to provide that information, just from a standpoint of dotting your I's and crossing your T's, right, to help you do that, right? So Dr. Farmer, you
Absolutely.
were saying, right? You were saying?
So I think, those are some of the biggest highlights. I would also point out something that I think is important for people who might disagree with the bail reform, right? Yes. And how exactly bail reform could be affected by this. Data shows that back in 2021, I believe it was, about 30% of felony cases in Cook County were dropped or ended in acquittal. So that's important when we're talking about pretrial custody, as well as the fact when we talk about making it more equitable, you have people, I've heard stories from people, right, before this was passed, because it was the Pretrial Fairness Act is how the bail reform started. And that became sort of enveloped in this bigger reform bill. People were telling stories about how, they were arrested because they had like a lot of unpaid tickets or something, right? Well, they can't afford bail. They lose their job.
Yes.
Right. So then they get out, they're unemployed. And it just has cascading negative effects like that, that you don't want to see for someone who is trying their best. Right. Exactly. So, yeah.
Exactly. And even for myself, just hearing that and, thinking a little deeper of it, I think of even another avenue that's affected, just from a standpoint of now taxpayers have to pay more, just from a standpoint of someone is held until that hearing and that acquittal, right? So that's taxpayer dollars, right? So someone has lost employment, right? So that, taxpayer dollars have to generate housing for this individual and food and medicine and so on and so forth. And then as well, someone is held, and as we said prior to, if this is passed on November 8th, someone is held because inequality. So a lot of things are going on at once, right? So that is why universal and just kind of, a more even and consistent police reform is needed, right? So that is why this Safety Act explores so many different avenues. And keep in mind, people, even after this, we still have to do more work, right? This is just, hey, this gives us a chip on our shoulder and lets us know, okay, we're going in the right direction. going in the right direction. Dr. Farmer, you spoke on the element as it relates to women that are incarcerated, right? And that is very key. Just from a standpoint of pregnancy, childbirth, things of that nature. So, can you kind of walk down that path a little bit more? I think that is a very important aspect to highlight, especially for a lot of our women voters as well.
I think just something in regards to having more protections for pregnant prisoners, like medical care, for example. Okay. So it requires corrections staff training related to the care of pregnant women, and it provides education and assistance with the care of children and newborn infants. So additional training to make sure that pregnant women who are incarcerated are getting the care that they need.
Wow. Just great stuff. Just great, amazing things, right? Now, the Safety Act, if am I correct, is this a Illinois bill or is this a...
Yes.
Okay. All right. So everyone, no matter what county you are in Illinois, you will vote on that, yes or no?
No, only because, so it affects all of Illinois, but only because this bill was already passed.
Okay.
So when people talk about how this will impact the upcoming elections.
Wow. See, you see this. The
Safety Act
web. Yes.
Yeah. The Safety Act, it has been signed by Governor Pritzker, regardless of how you vote, in November, it is passed. The issue that they are bringing up in regards to the election on November 8th is nothing about bail. It is that they want to overturn this bill. And so that if certain people are elected, they are promising that they will sort of walk this back and get rid of these reforms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the Safety Act itself is
January 1st, 2023, no matter what.
Cash bail is abolished. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Farmer, for clarifying that. That's what I said. It's so much confusion in the public. It's so much confusion, right? It's so much confusion. And that is why it is so important to speak with the experts, right? Give the experts the mic. Give the experts, right? So, Dr. Farmer, what else can you share? Because I'm enjoying the conversation as well. Like, wow, you even gave me information because I truly was under the impression we are voting on this on November 8th, right? So, hey, it's just amazing to have the right individuals provide the information that you need, right? Especially as it relates to life decisions, people, especially as it relates. So, Dr. Farmer, anything else that you could share?
Sure. So one thing, this is just
bill. It's 800 pages.
It's 800 pages. Yeah. So there is just a lot of misinformation I've seen personally that I think it's important to dispel. So one of those is this question of, well, if someone is trespassing on my property now with the new reforms in policing and this bill, police officers can't do anything. They can't arrest that person. And so this is a myth, right? So the Safety Act does require police to ticket people accused of low-level offenses. Criminal trespassing is one of those low-level offenses, unless they pose an obvious threat to themselves or the community. So police officers still have discretion to arrest someone for any of those crimes, those low-level offenses, if they think that they're a threat to public safety. So I think it's really important to get that out there, that, you don't have to worry if somebody is trespassing on your property and they refuse to leave. They can be arrested.
Exactly.
Right? The second thing that I've seen a lot of misinformation about is this idea of detainable and non-detainable offenses.
Yes.
Right? So the Safety Act does not have any non-detainable offenses. Illinois law doesn't have any such thing like that.
No such thing.
So certain crimes, right, in the bill, including forcible felonies, stalking, domestic battery, domestic abuse, can lead a judge to revoke pretrial release, meaning they will not be released after arrest. So anyone who's arrested for a forcible felony is held in pretrial detention.
Exactly.
Right?
As it should be.
And
yes.
Yes. And so some of the crimes that have been listed in these graphics going around about these are non-detainable offenses, it's just not true, right? It doesn't mean that perpetrators of these crimes are guaranteed to be let out of jail. Because a judge can revoke pretrial release from anyone who poses and this is a quote from the bill, who poses a specific, real, and present threat to any person or the community, or is deemed a flight risk. Yes. So it doesn't matter what someone's arrested for, or there's other caveats too, like if they're on probation or parole, or if they are already on pretrial release for something, that means that they're automatically held pretrial as well. So those are important things to dispel myths about too.
Exactly. Especially during the Halloween season. Let's just dispel the myths, people. Let's dispel the myths. Yeah. So no matter if it's low level or a very, very, vicious felony, A 1, 2, 3, 4 X, it doesn't matter, So hey. Thank you for clarifying that as well. So, because there are so many myths, just so many, and what that does, it just kind of taints the water. It taints the water, and the beautiful work that the criminal justice, researchers, lobbyists, so on and so forth, have been doing to actually bring forth this safety act. We don't want that to happen. As far as just so much confusion. So wow, those are some different myths, if you will. Very different myths. Very different. Wow.
And I guess one other thing I would highlight about the bail component is if anyone is familiar with the story of Khalif Browder in New York.
Yes.
Right. So it didn't happen here, but he was 16. Yes, he was 16, and he was held in Rikers Island for 3 years in pretrial detention. He was not convicted of any of the charges that had led to his arrest yet at that point, because his family couldn't afford the bail.
Yes.
So this is a story that a lot of people might be familiar with.
Exactly.
That kind of relates back to you have this 16-year-old who was held in jail, never convicted of a crime.
Yes.
And eventually, he killed himself 2 years, I think, after his release from prison. So, that's hard, right? And I think that this is just one of those well-known stories that if we're talking about the cost of bail, like the social costs of bail, right? It
spills over into a lot of other places. Yes. And so that's a mouthful there. So and the I guess in the essence of it, it appears that it's just on the forefront, but even after, it's that thing that continues to chase, right? So wow. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that Khalif Browder case because it was something that was of very national notoriety of the time. I know even since his passing, may he rest in peace as well. There's been a lot of talk and discussion and just a lot of highlighting of that particular story, and even as individuals are released, what are some of the earmarks, if you will, to kind of help them in their transition, especially as we're talking about criminal justice reform and helping individuals become empowered to be law-abiding citizens, but also helping them get on track as well. So these are very important, key components that we want to talk about. Was there anything else, Dr. Farmer, that you feel is
I think those are the big issues. I think maybe more broadly, I understand, that people are fearful of crime.
Yes.
Right. And when you have sweeping reforms like this, the misinformation isn't helping, which is why I'm so thankful that you're putting this together and that we had this chance to talk, because, I don't think that there's actually anything to be fearful of.
Exactly.
People who are considered dangerous will still be held in pretrial detention. Yes. And I don't think there's much to worry about in that regard. There are going to be different organizations doing research as this rolls out. And so they're going to be keeping track of this data to see how effective it is. So we'll know, pretty early on as to how it compares to when we did have bail, right? What does this look like? Is it a more equitable system?
Exactly. Compare, contrast. And that's exactly what I meant by the work continues, right? So this is just one one component of the work. But hey, on the back end, they'll be tracking. They'll be, hey, we'll put this in SPSS, and we'll say, hey, take a look and say that doesn't look right. Those things don't correlate. So just amazing, just amazing. So Dr. Farmer, I thank you so much for your time here tonight. Right.
Thank you.
Yes, just empowering our voters and just taking your time. And we thank you for continuing your research and just all that you do for the students there on Illinois State's campus and just empowering those individuals to go out and change the world as well. Was there anything else that you could add, Dr. Farmer? Are you on social media? Can you say the name of that act again? And
I'm actually not on social media in terms of, like a professional profile or anything. But the name of the act, the full name is the Illinois Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act.
Yes, amazing, amazing, amazing. So, Dr. Farmer, thank you once again for being a part of Spoken from a Bird's Eye View podcast. So, thank you for pressing play and tapping in on yet another episode of Spoken from a Bird's Eye View podcast. I want to thank our guest here tonight, Dr. Ashley Farmer. She provided great insight, and I hope that was very insightful and beneficial as you go into the election season. Now, just to clarify, I do want to point out that come November 8th, there will not be an official vote for the Safety Act. But come November 8th, if we do not take this so serious and get out and make our vote count and also vote in numbers and also just strengthen the actual voting process, what I do fear is that we will see a reversal of the Safety Act. So officially on January 1st, 2023, the Safety Act and all of its provisions will go into place, right, as far as law in the state of Illinois. But if we do not vote in masses on November 8th, then we fear that in the near future that bill will be reversed. So I want to thank everyone for pressing play and tapping in. And remember, until the next time my voice meets your ears, no matter what's your vantage point, no matter what's your perspective, always seek to celebrate culture, increase understanding, and build bonds of bird's eye view, melanin that's woke. Over and out, people. Whew.